This disclosure update is about smoking gun evidence of UAP and biological creatures associated with these technologies. Because that's what the disclosure is about, is it not? If at least some of this isn't part of the destiny of our species, then there is no disclosure, only human error and fallibility. But I don't believe that. Indeed, I believe a paradigm shift is upon us of which our species has never experienced in its 300,000 years of existence, warfare, and domination. I think my friend Bryce Zabel put it best in his most recent amazing podcast episode with Ross Coulthart. Link of it is in the description below.
I mean, you remember after 9/11, we said, well, everything's going to change. And of course, it didn't really all change after 9/11. I believe after disclosure, it all really will change.
The world, as we know it, will be turned upside down in a post-disclosure world. No institution, religion, culture, or art will be untouched by it. Where we're headed is beyond the grasp of man's imagination. There are no reference points to where we're headed, and thus nobody can predict the winds of change that are a-coming, and how those winds will change everything in its path. It would be like predicting the afterlife. Nobody really knows what the afterlife is like, except those that have gone there, and what they experienced or didn't experience, I know not. In the vein of smoking gun UFO evidence, here's a very pertinent tweet by James Fox. Believe it or not, I'm actually focusing on my next project. Would love to hear from you all about what aspect of the phenomenon you'd like to know more about. I'm thinking, where's the definitive evidence and who has the authority to release it? I will read all responses. Now, it looks like James Fox is already on the prowl of attaining definitive evidence of the phenomena. On, I believe, August 15th, he was on UK Talk TV on the show The Unexplained with Howard Hughes. And he had the following to say regarding alleged creatures that were encountered in 1996 in a UFO event series in Varginha, Brazil. Citizens living there reported seeing one or more strange creatures and a UFO crash, and that's what his upcoming documentary chronicles.
Have you got pictures of the creatures?
That's,
You're sounding like a man who has. but can't say right now.
Let me answer the question by, I'm just trying to not expose our contacts and also tell your audience what I know.
Mm-hmm.
We have located both photographic and video evidence, yes.
Okay, well that's a start. I mean, that's going to
I'm not trying to evade the question or spike. I don't want that to come across the wrong way. But to answer your question, yes, we have.
All right, you've got the material. And is that material, which presumably isn't in the documentary, are you going to release that at some point? Will you be able to?
It's not in the documentary yet.
Yet?
We have... God, there's so much stuff I'd like to go into, and I just don't want to... I don't want to compromise... I don't want to compromise or jeopardize our efforts. But just
plus also, we've got less than 2 minutes, so there's not much we can say.
I don't want your audience to think, what is this guy just dancing around this issue? Just imagine for a moment, yes, we have located the evidence, and we've offered an extremely large cash prize for said evidence, and we're working on it.
Right, so you know where it is, and you're trying to obtain it. How cool is that?
Now, any skeptic that would watch that with James Fox would be extremely dubious that there's any real possibility that there was a UAP crash in Varginha, Brazil, involving creatures and involving video and photographic capture of at least some of the event that would give credence to the reality of the event. And I understand that. And I'm the same way in many respects. I'll believe it when I see it. On the other hand, this event is known, as I recollect, as the Brazilian Roswell. And if there's enough corroborating witness testimony, then I can't, in any objectivity, just assume that they're all delusional. Isn't that what got us to where we are today? Isn't that where science went wrong? They didn't look through the telescope because they just assumed that all the witnesses must be wrong, even though they weren't there. That is a precarious approach that, in due time, may demonstrate simply does not work. And so, regarding the potential that such evidence exists of a crashed UAP and creatures in Varginha, Brazil from 1996, I'm going to keep an open mind. The bottom line is, independent of that, poring over the full array of evidence that I've been able to, I do think there's a real phenomena constituting unknown technologies operated by non-human intelligence. And so if someone comes to that assessment, but simultaneously maintains that nothing could ever crash and creatures could never be seen, that's inherently illogical. So as a result, I'm keeping a very open mind to this evidence. James Fox has put out a huge cash reward, and I don't think and he seems to believe that the evidence exists. He said he's located it. So that's really exciting. I hope that comes to fruition. And I believe this documentary called Moment of Contact comes out in October, and I'm really looking forward to it. I'm not that read up on this UAP event series that took place in Brazil, and so that will be a very powerful educational experience, and I think is very well suited for where we are right now, because we are, in my opinion, going through a disclosure process on account of there being a ground truth to this phenomena. Well, let's see where the chips fall. On August 18th, Jeremy Corbell chimed in on an article titled, "NASA's going full force to gear up for UFO study. This really is important to us, and we're placing high priority on it." Jeremy writes, "NASA's on the UFO thing. I wonder if NASA has requested and received the raw UFO data compiled by the National Reconnaissance Office and analyzed by the Geospatial Intelligence Agency." Here's a good excerpt from that article. "We're going full force on preparations for the UAP study," Daniel Evans, Assistant Deputy Assistant Administrator for Research at SMD, said during Wednesday's town hall. "This is really important to us, and we're placing a high priority on it. The study panel will consist of 15 to 17 people," Evans added. "These folk will be some of the world's leading scientists, data practitioners, artificial intelligence practitioners, aerospace safety experts, all with a specific charge, which is to tell us how to apply the full focus of science and data to UAP," he said. James Fox, who we were discussing earlier in this video, cites Vice.com covering the same story that Space.com did. "NASA will now go full force investigating UFOs," agency says. And then underneath that he writes, "Baby steps and keep the pressure on to the max. Maybe then we'll start seeing results." I'm really stressed right now. It's August 19th, and I'm making the video, and there's a lot of nuggets to include about disclosure updates that may occur in the future that could be profound. And we're in a very critical time right now, and it's a real privilege to cover it. Now, here's a really interesting tweet by Sean Cahill. Sean Cahill, he was in the Navy for a long time. He was involved in law enforcement, I think on the Nimitz carrier strike group. He did a lot of stuff, very accomplished. But he also works very closely with Lou Elizondo. in pushing the ball forward to pressure the United States government to have transparency on this scientific enigma we call UAP. Now, he dropped a very interesting tweet. I think it's today that he dropped it. And we're going to dig into that because, in my estimation, he's not of the character profile to just drop stupid teasers, if you will, for the heck of it. He's very well connected. He has a good head on his shoulders. So this little teaser that he dropped, in my estimation, is definitely worth looking into. So it was on August 18th, 7:05 p.m. Sean Cahill, not one to indulge in stupid teasers, in my opinion, writes, provided without comment. And in this GIF, it is a cup. And it is actually from the movie Jurassic Park, where a dinosaur, I believe, was approaching the car, and the people in the car didn't know exactly what to make of it. The person in the driver's seat's like, oh, maybe they're putting the power back on. But it ultimately did end up being a dinosaur, and all hell breaks loose. But the obvious indication that he is demonstrating with this tweet is that something is coming, and not something trivial, but something apparently huge. Now, this gets explicitly clarified because Mike Colangelo writes to Sean Cahill, this is an awesome way of saying something big is coming, to which Sean Cahill provides a GIF, again from Jurassic Park, with Jeff Goldblum saying, well, there it is. Now, I'll be perfectly frank. I don't know what he is referencing, but I know his personality profile to some extent. And so the coming days and weeks may be rather interesting. And there have been other teases on Twitter from other people about new revelations that are coming. Now let's dig into those. J. Christopher King, co-founder of the Experiencer Group, on August 18th writes, really fun, exciting stuff coming next week for those following anomalous studies. I chime in. Oh? Care to elaborate? Jay responds, well, folks know that Ross has his new piece coming out Sunday. That'll be great. Then there's something pretty exciting happening Monday, in my humble opinion, which relates to something on Friday. I'm not talking Lou landing on the White House lawn, but there will be some high fives in order. Further clarification on the Friday. Paul Scott Anderson says, do you mean this coming Friday or Friday next week? Jay says, I mean Friday next week, but I can still cross my fingers for an unrelated classic Friday drop this week as well. So Jay referenced Ross Coulthart's upcoming piece, and the trailer for it was posted on Twitter. I'm just going to read you the transcript of this quick trailer. What you're seeing here is momentous. You think that's alien technology? Yes, I do. We have new conclusive proof, testable evidence of alien technology. This renowned scientist confirms it all. Is it possible to exceed the speed of light? The answer is yes, and I believe that's Michio Kaku speaking. This biggest discovery in human history, and that was Gary Nolan, since he's going to be in this as well. New evidence that has to be seen to be believed. 7 News Spotlight, Sunday on 7 and 7 Plus. I don't have much to say on Ross Coulthart's upcoming documentary. I think the trailer that was dropped had a lot of splicing with the sound bites, so it's hard to really know the context of what was spoken, and so it's easy to misinterpret what was stated. Nevertheless, it does sound like this is going to be a very compelling documentary, and there might be some surprises in it of further revelations, but that remains to be seen. My understanding is it's going to drop this Sunday somewhere, and eventually it's going to be published on YouTube. So I look forward to that. I'm not going to hype it up too much. I'm just going to keep an open mind to see what it has to offer, in the same way that I'm keeping an open mind with James Fox and what he's pursuing right now regarding evidence of creatures being encountered in Varginha, Brazil, 1996. Okay, so I came across this, which may provide greater clarity on what's going to be in this upcoming documentary. Reginald Singh is with Patrick Ida Jackson and Dragan Visovic. And here it is written. Okay, I think it's time to come out of the UFO closet. I've been deeply fascinated with the topic of extraterrestrial life interacting with our planet and its role in defining human genetics. To some, this curiosity may have seemed like a frivolous waste of time. Still, I have always maintained that there are profound life-altering truths about human existence and the human condition yet to be uncovered. These truths extend beyond race, religion, or politics and could challenge nearly every false narrative, creation myth, and belief system we have held onto so tightly over the last 2,000 plus years. Sick of sitting on the sidelines absorbing secondary information, I took this interest to the next level and connected with highly reputable scientists, researchers, and experiencers within the UFO community. Together, a core group of us have formed a globally distributed research organization, www.orbresearchbureau.com. ORB operates as a DAO and leverages existing and emerging technology in smartphone cameras, infrared and low light sensors, deep machine learning, AI, Web3, and soon crypto to enable crowdsourced research, citizen science, and UFO disclosure efforts. Why? Because we frankly don't trust the world's governments to tell the truth, and because most of us are at a stage in life where we can dedicate time, intellect, and energy to the pursuit of hidden knowledge. This Sunday, 21st of August, Ross Coulthart, a highly respected Australian journalist, will disclose information with material evidence on mainstream media for the first time. The journey begins now. Welcome down the rabbit hole. We like it here. From August 15, Michael Colangelo. Word on the street. U.S. Congress has found the UFO crash retrieval programs hidden within the private sector. They are working on getting full access to these programs. Danny Silva responds, "Yup, this is the big rumor. Many people are saying this. Well, not necessarily the crash retrieval program, but the secret programs that may deal with crash retrievals." And here's Christopher Sharp, who has many connections, just as Danny Silva does, from August 17th. Remember, information provided to Congress regarding UAP legacy programs was verifiable. I write, "You're saying that you know some of Congress knows there are legacy UAP programs and this isn't just a hunch?" To which Christopher responds, "More than a hunch, but not cold hard fact yet. Make no mistakes about it. And this is not hyperbolic. There is no debate or question that key members of the United States Congress are looking into the question of, has there been legacy UAP programs and are they still continuing to this day? That's a fact. And I will tell you right now that I do not believe for a second that there has not been legacy UAP programs that have been much more well-funded than ATIP or OSAP, because I believe the phenomena is real. If the phenomena is real, then there's legacy UAP programs. It's just that simple. Assuming that the sensor collecting mechanisms of the United States military have been able to pick these things up, which the evidence points strongly in that direction. What I can't verify, but is indeed the big rumor, and many important people are saying this, is that there have been people coming out of these legacy programs who have been in contact with Congress, and that these legacy programs will come to light. And I've said it before and I'll say it again. If these legacy programs truly exist, housed in aerospace companies, such as Lockheed Martin, just as an example, they have the evidence, they have the data. Unless you want to believe they don't have the evidence, they don't have the data, and yet they're receiving hundreds of millions, billions of dollars to study a phenomena that doesn't truly exist. I think the mainstream media is going to be shocked when this comes out. And I think Ross Coulthart put it really well, how the media is going to respond when this reaches the next level, which I personally anticipate it will, but of course, I could be wrong.
But I think also, frankly, speaking as somebody who works in the mainstream media, I think also that what you might see in 2023 is the beginning of the begrudging acknowledgement by the mainstream media, the legacy media, that they have completely failed to cover this issue properly up till now, and that you're going to see an engagement like there's never before, especially because the Congress will leak. If there are private hearings where witnesses are deposed, and we know that there already have been, I think that eventually that evidence is going to make its way to the national security and defense reporters in Washington, in New York, in LA, and eventually it'll start getting written about.
Ross also had this to say.
And let me tell you, Bryce, and let me tell our listeners and our viewers, those witnesses are definitely coming. I am now very, very sure that we are going to see key whistleblowers fairly soon talking about legacy program.
Now, Ross has stated that he can't guarantee these whistleblowers coming forward in 2022, but he suspects that it will certainly happen by 2023, as far as I understand. And I agree with him that if these whistleblowers come forward, even if it's in closed hearings that are not meant to be public, such revelations will ultimately leak based upon the sheer weight of the implications of legacy UAP programs that have been funded hundreds of millions, billions of dollars over decades. And I think what will happen as a consequence of that, when it starts getting written up in mainstream media, is that civilization is going to make up for lost time. Because the phenomena didn't emerge in 2004 with the USS Nimitz UFO event series with Commander David Fravor and others. People have been reporting these weird technological objects for decades and decades, and all the associated experiences that have gone along with them. And yet, simultaneously, all 7-8 billion of us have ultimately been ignoring this reality, which is an incredible paradox. On the one hand, you have the most profound component of reality, arguably, that manifests in our biosphere. And on the other hand, you have academics and journalists, scientists, and so many more ignoring this reality. Reminds me of a quote, ironically by Neil deGrasse Tyson, which is, "The universe is under no obligation to make sense to you." And I think that's essentially the UAP personified. Not only the nature of the UAP, but the human response to the tens of thousands of witnesses that have come forward over the decades and the many corroborated UFO sightings that have occurred. We have collectively ignored all of that in the name of assuming it wasn't real. Now, I grant you, there are some of us that pay attention to it, but proportionate to the reality of not being alone, being engaged by non-human intelligence or intelligences to the point where they're landing, allegedly at least, at schoolyards, like in Ruru, Zimbabwe aerial school. I think it was, 1994? There have been many other alleged school landings. We're talking abductions. We're talking people receiving telepathic messages. We are talking unambiguous close proximity sightings. We're talking people getting injured from the technologies themselves, and this happening over decades, never desisting, never slowing down, a permanent fixture of our existence, and yet we've collectively ignored it. Indeed, the universe has no obligation to make sense to you. So, what could be some of the governmental fallout if it comes to light that there have been UAP legacy programs essentially running rogue and yet getting taxpayer dollars with no oversight from the United States Congress? Obviously, such a revelation would lead to reformation within the government. I really like what journalist Christopher Sharp, who I cited just recently in this video, thinks could occur as a result of this kind of scandal coming to light. In a July 15th article that he wrote titled, Revisiting 1947, the inside story on new congressional language which could reshape history as concerns persist over continued involvement of Lou Elizondo's former office. He writes, notably, something appears to have escaped Pandora's box, forcing politicians to contemplate the repercussions of a moment akin to the Church Committee of 1975, which led to the very creation of the same Senate Select Committee on Intelligence that helped draft the current IAA language, UAP language. Back in 1975, U.S. government reforms were prompted by abuses of power from U.S. intelligence agencies, leading to shocking revelations such as Operation MKUltra, involving the drugging and torture of U.S. citizens. It may be inevitable that the potential discovery of alleged secretive and illegal UAP programs could lead to similar significant reforms within the U.S. government. If proven, it is likely such programs date back decades. In regards to the United States Congress being informed of legacy UAP programs, George Knapp had the following to say on July 31st on Coast to Coast AM while interviewing Christopher Sharp of Liberation Times. He stated, I mean, it's clear that somebody has been sharing information with them, you know? I can tell you for sure. But there are people who have met with them and who have told them not only that there are these legacy programs that have materials, and by materials, I don't mean just scraps of metal from the ground, but intact craft remains, physical remains of beings. You know, those stories have been floating around for a long time. I know that there are a couple of people in particular who know about this stuff, down to the point of where the buildings where this stuff is stashed, who are willing to come forward if they're protected. And now this legislation indicates they will be protected as whistleblowers, that their security clearances will not be revoked. And it is pretty exciting. Now, who knows what obstacles might be put up to stop this from happening before anything gets on the record. But you'll look at the agencies that are specifically dictated by Congress who will be a part of this organization. And by organization, the new UAP office demanded by Congress. CIA, NSA, Department of Energy, National Reconnaissance Office, Air Force, Space Force, DIA, and the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency. Air Force, of course, is sort of the big question mark. Because for the last 5 years of revelations about UFOs, UAP, whatever you want to call them, Air Force has been remarkably silent. They reluctantly agreed to put up some kind of UFO listening post in one particular hotspot. But they haven't said much of anything. And you just know that if anyone has the information, the evidence, the data, it's them, right? Here's a really interesting series of tweets. Adam Goldsack writes, well done, UFO Twitter. NASA hears you. Because Tiny Klaus wrote, NASA Associate Administrator Thomas Zurbuchen comments on the public interest in UFOs. We hear you. If you point it out on social media, we hear you. To which Nobel Prize nominee, world-renowned immunologist of Stanford, who has a lab named after him, Gary Nolan writes, the last 15 seconds. Quote, the first step is to identify the data, expanding, collate the data, find patterns, then postulate hypotheses, weaving facts into defensible arguments. This is why the circle of people realizing this is important is expanding. Facts and data. And then Heraclitus responds to Gary Nolan, if we increase the amount of data we have, it can only help. Those quote-unquote debunkers out there who are trying to maintain the stigma would rather we not collect more data because they already know the truth. To which Gary Nolan responds, we shall be gracious in victory. We shall be gracious in victory. Nolan is not a guy that I would personally bet against. So I guess that wraps it up. 1,700 days after December 16th, 2017 New York Times article. And we are, in my opinion, going to learn that there are and have been legacy UAP programs and that the phenomena is real and that we are not alone. And I think that I'll look back at a video like this very fondly. That I stuck to my guns and called it like I saw it. Even though it appears this is all nonsense. It appears this is all LARPing or fantasy or a lack of critical thinking skills. But then again, that is the complexity of our universe, which seems one way can be completely the other way. Please do not forget to subscribe. And if you'd like to support this channel, you can check out my merch shop where I sell t-shirts. You become a merchant. Merchant? What am I talking about? You could become a patron. It's been a long night. You could become a YouTube member. You could even just give me a one-time donation, and I'd appreciate it so much. And if you're still watching now, well, you've been watching a long time. Type in the comment section below, blue, so that I know you watched. Thank you so much. And you could also just give me a like, and I'd appreciate it so much. Thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in the next episode. Special thanks to all patrons, YouTube members, those that have bought merch, those that have given me a one-time donation. I couldn't do without you. Thank you so much. See you in the next episode.